And we are on page 688 of Sri Sarada Devi and her divine play, studying God as mother and the divine feminine. And we're at the break in the page, two-thirds, three-quarters of the way down the page. And this is really nice. We get to start off here with some of Holy Mother's teachings. So we're getting a treat that we don't often get. Normally, it's by looking at her life and her doings that we learn from her. But here is somebody who's written down a few of her teachings. It says Swami Ishanananda also recorded a few of Holy Mother's teachings. There is no wealth equal to contentment, and no virtue equal to forbearance. That's one of my favorite sayings of the Divine Mother. There is no wealth equal to contentment, just to be happy with what you have, which is, in my mind, these days, I used to look at renunciation as this sort of blanket giving up of everything. But I really think that the real renunciation is to find each moment perfect. That it's not a matter of giving up or doing any heroic acts like that. It's a matter of needing nothing, to be able to be comfortable where you're at with the conditions that you're given in the circumstances that you find yourself, and to not find the need to change or to improve your environment, but to be content, to find a contentment in it. So no wealth equal to contentment because that's I read that in a mother put it in a men's room. I'm going to put it in the men's room when I tell you the story. So I was in the men's room and there was a little plaque on the wall right in front of my face, and it said, "There are two ways to become wealthy in this world: desire less or earn more." And I read that. I wasn't even at the time. I was not a monk. I'd not much spiritual interest, and I just took that as not a spiritual teaching, but just a wisdom saying. And I thought, wow, that's really true. If I just don't want all of the stuff that I have to pay for, then I don't have to pay for it. So that contentment as a sign of renunciation, as a sign of spiritual strength, is important. And then here she says, and no virtue equal to forbearance, to patience. Because patience will require all of the other virtues, to remain authentically patient, to not, that you have to have your ego under control. Um, Yesterday I was in the car with somebody who was just learning how to drive, and boy, that's an interesting experience. And I really saw, wow, how much patience that would take. To remain calm and to, you tell them something two or three times and they don't do it, and you don't want to yell, you know. And so this forbearance, it's another a great signal of how much you have conquered your ego. If you can be patient with someone and just not be bothered and just work with them for a long time, being abused again and again or being disappointed again and again, that's real forbearance. That's a real important aspect. Then she says, forget your individuality and try to realize your true nature. Right? We know from Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, right, that there's none such thing as a person. 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 And I could sit here and say that over and over again, and I'd be looking at you and I'd be like, and there's still 15 people in front of me. What's going on? None such thing as a person. So we are not individuals, right? We are universal. And so identifying with silence really helps with that, because in that silence you can suss out the unity, you can know the unity firsthand, not in a way that you describe, but in a knowing. And so forget your individuality. Try and not think of yourself as an individual. And really, the way that you do that is by not thinking of yourself. If you're thinking of yourself, you're only going to be able to think of yourself as a person because you're referencing the individual. So if you're constantly thinking of others, constantly praying for others, constantly doing practice for others, uh, constantly serving and looking for opportunities, empathizing, expanding yourself to include the needs of others. That's how we stop seeing ourselves as individuals, stop seeing ourselves as persons, and to start serving like that without it even being a thought, because it's only necessary now to have a thought because we're in bad habits of selfishness, right? And so we have to make a concerted effort to not be selfish because that's a thought pattern of ours. We're afraid to not get that last piece of pizza before the person in front of us gets it. And so that's what drives our individuality. And so by thinking of others, we would learn to see ourselves in others, and our primary concern would be the well-being of the others around us. And so that's how we expand egoism. For householders, as Swami Prabhupada described it to me, that's really the work in Vedanta, is expansion of ego, and not destruction. The monks, it's destruction of ego. But for the householder, it's expansion, which means that, when you're alone, you're taking care of your own responsibilities, your own expenses and whatnot. And then if you follow the householder path, you get married, and now you've got a second person. So you have to expand your ego to include that person in your life, that it's no longer just what you need and what you makes you happy.
Take medication.
Oops, let me turn that off.
This is a reminder. Take medication.
All right. Somebody better take their medication. So forget your individuality and try to realize your true nature by expanding your ego to include the people around you. So as a householder, that's a natural progression. You get married, you now have two people to worry about, you have children, you have to expand your sense of self to include your children. Your children have friends and you have neighbors and you have people in your neighborhood that and can be helpful toward. And so you expand your ego to include the well-being of your neighbors, the well-being of your kids' friends. And then when they grow up and they have children and grandchildren, you see throughout your life, you're constantly learning to expand that ego to nurture everyone in conjunction with yourself. And so that's the householder way of doing it. For the monks, Ramakant Swami Prabhupada told me you have to burn it out with sadhana. Set fire to the house, burn it down.
So through silence, you said it is a universal.
Mm,
So,
yes.
so what will be the opposite of silencing if something is going on in their mind? You are
Identifying
not
with
able.
mind. Yeah, identifying with mind would be the opposite.
Oh, okay. And then you cannot include people. You are not one, right?
Say that again.
If you are not silent, that means you are not able to include everyone as your own.
Well, no, not necessarily. That's just a trick. Something that I was using to not identify myself with something that expresses or produces a desire or a need. I identify with silence because I think that's my nature. For the mind to be silent in the moment is my
Okay.
natural state. And through that silence, when the mind, it's because it's not just silent mind. It's really the non-identity with mind, that separation from you and mind. And so what attribute do you identify with? Because we sort of want something to identify with. It's sort of our nature to ID with something. And so I picked the least problematic characteristics I could think of was silence, to identify myself with silence, to say, I am silent. I am silence. And not silence. It's important because in Vedanta, silence is kind of a misnomer because normally silence means the absence of noise. But in Vedanta, when we say silence, we mean something returning to its pure potential of infinite, right? But not expressed. And so when we identify with silence, we're just identifying with non-thought. We're identifying with something that needs no description, right? Something that has no interest, something that has no need. And so to identify as silence, you go into that space because it's the silence that allows you to know that the mind is noisy, right? It's the silent self inside that allows you to feel frustrated that you can't meditate, right? But the reason that we suffer non meditation is because we identify with the noisy mind and we say, I can't meditate. But if you identify with the silence and watch the mind, then the mind can be noisy at the same time that you can meditate because you are at the quiet end of the stick watching the noisy mind, where all the noise of the mind is indicating to you that you're in a silent space, right? So you use the changing mind to highlight the fact that you're not changing because you can witness the change, right? It's like if you're in the elevator, you can't see the change. If you're outside of the elevator, you see the elevator move, right? And so we are not a part of this material world because we can see all of the change, no matter what the nature of that change is. We can see all the forms of change. And so that indicates that we are not a part of this system, right? That we are the observer of the whole. And so we identify with something that's removed from the whole, which is the silence that allows for the whole, right? Just like silence allows for sound, space or emptiness allows for objects, right? And so we identify with that, the unmanifest, as it were, the divine absolute, which of course we're not really doing that, but just as a practice, placing ourselves in that still silence and then allowing everything that isn't silent and everything that makes noise to be the pointer at the silence that we are sitting in, right? And so that's a way of using your noisy mind to help you find the silence, right? So
Beautiful,
allow,
yes.
yeah, so allow everything to point to that. What was that, Rajani?
No, I said it's beautifully explained. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, yes, surely. So it's from Mother. She says it. All right, her next teaching. How can any harm come to one who always thinks of his or her chosen deity? One of the most straightforward and obvious pieces of wisdom there is. If you're chanting the name of God, you're not lusting. If you're chanting the name of God, you're not hating. If you're chanting the name of God, you're not hungry. You know, it's like you're keeping your mind on the beloved, on the divine beloved. You only get in trouble when you stop keeping your mind on the beloved, when you start letting your mind wander toward body or itself, right? The mind is only able to collect desires from either itself or from the body, but not from the thought of God, not from the thought of self as Atman, right? When we go inside, when we get practiced on going inside, that's one of the first things we come to see quite clearly is that all desires come from either the body or the mind. No desires come from self, from the witness, because the witness is eternally content, eternally silent, eternally still. You know, I had a wonderful experience with that one time. I've shared this before. I was sitting in the shrine in D.C. and meditating, and I was having a horrible, I was having a horrible meditation. Oh God, it was one of those ones where like, you know, I wanted to just sit there for 20 minutes. It was during the day and it wasn't a meditation time. And I thought I'll just go in for 20 minutes. And I was sitting in there. Oh, it was torture. It was absolute torture because my mind wouldn't calm down. I couldn't relax. And every time I looked at my watch, like 40 seconds had passed. You know, it was just like, ugh, 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 right? And so that was really a trouble. And I was sitting there feeling really impatient and thinking, I gotta get up. I'm not going to sit here and do this. And then I just, you know, intuited. I don't know how to talk about these things because I've got all kinds of insanity in my head. But Mother was in there, and Mother was telling me at that time, she was just saying to me, she's saying, look, don't be ridiculous. You have been sitting and watching body after body after body after body for thousands of years. What makes you think in this moment that you're impatient? You have been the watcher of things for thousands of years. Be that watcher now and relax into those thousands of years. That was such an amazing realization or seeing. I was like, wow, that's true. How have I managed to be the self, observing body after body after body after body, never moving and never changing for thousands of years without getting irritated, without getting, you know, uh, impatient, right? And so just to remember our nature, right? To remember our nature. So how can any harm come to one who always thinks of his or her chosen deity? Do you know how one can develop equal love for all? Do not expect anything from the one you love. Only then can one love everyone equally. Right? That's a beautiful teaching. It's probably one of the most difficult teachings. To love everyone without expectation. That means you give someone a gift, you don't expect one in return. So that when they don't give you one, it doesn't bother you. You know, or they don't come to your party, you still invite them to yours, right? Or they don't invite you to their party, but you still invite them to yours. You have no expectations, no strings on the way that you care for people. That is the way to love equanimously. That is the way to become the person of steady wisdom. Do not attach expectations to your love, to your compassion, to your kindness, to your sweetness, to your friendliness, to you. Just don't expect it. Don't require it. And look, is he a human being who has no compassion in his heart? Right? So compassion is not an exceptional person. A compassionate person is a human being, right? Which goes right in hand with the truth of the matter is that an enlightened person is not a special person. An enlightened person is a human being who is natural to himself or herself, right? Our natural, normal condition is enlightenment. Our deluded condition, is Maya. But to be what we are is our natural condition, to be enlightened. So being human is to be compassionate. Holy Mother was the ultimate authority for the Ramakrishna order. In case of doubt, dilemma, problem, or crisis, the monks sought her advice, and the omniscient Mother offered solutions. Swami Saradeshanananda described her advice as concise and clear, discreet, practical, affectionate, and compassionate. Above all, she taught through her exemplary life. Swami Saradeshanananda's record illustrates this. A head of center could not control the junior monks who were Mother's disciples, so he sought the Mother's advice. She said, "The boys have become monks to call on God and to make their lives blessed. They are doing their best for the ashrama and will always do so. They are now grown up. Their minds and intellects are developed, and they are aware of right and wrong, good and bad. Under such circumstances, if they proceed to work independently, you should not be an obstacle to their path. However, if you stop them, they will not be able to continue working permanently under you, going through mental privations. If you find any difficulty in getting your work done, you will have to respectfully explain the entire situation to them. They have been obeying you all along and will also do so now. One can accomplish everything by love. You cannot make a person work by force or by duplicity." All right. I have to remember that little quote. Yes. That is the way. Love is the magic thing. Do what love would do in all situations. That will automatically make you humble, right? That will automatically reduce your ego. And it will bring about a great deal of peace in your life to work from that love. And your expansion, you'll see the power that comes into your mind and body when you keep it pure and when you hold that light in there and identify yourself with that space, that light, that silence, that wisdom, that Satchitananda, and practice that self-control. A brahmachari from Garbheda ashrama was traveling around collecting money for the ashram. One day he came to Jairambati. Holy Mother always felt perturbed whenever someone came to that area to raise money in the name of the master or in her name. Nonetheless, she fed the brahmachari affectionately and inquired about his visit to Jairambati. She then told him, "My son, the poor people of these villages somehow survive with great difficulty by farming. It is not right to come and collect money from these people. If you appeal to them for money in the name of the master, they will all consider him disgusting." The term fundraising always created an uneasy feeling in the mother's mind, right? And this is one of those things I so firmly feel that if it's in mother's will, you don't need to fundraise. And I don't think that that's pie in the sky. I think that's very real. When I went to Colorado and when we did that 2 years of working, I never asked for a nickel, never did any fundraising, and everything was paid for. Everything, everything was covered. It's like if mother wants something done and you're working in accordance with mother, the divine will, no fundraising, no such thing. Not necessary. Go forward. Mother will provide the money if you're providing a service. If you're doing something that's egoless in the desire to serve mother, and you're trying your best to identify with silence so you can hear her, you can respond to her knowings within you, then you go forward. You go forward in that way. Indiscriminate mixing with worldly people and engaging in gossip with them will lead one to degradation. Holy Mother always cautioned her disciples against this danger. Once she sent one of her disciples on an errand to a neighboring village. He finished his work, spent a long time there, and then returned to the mother. She later learned that the disciple had finished his errand quickly. He then stayed to chat and got entangled in an unfortunate situation. Saddened, the mother firmly told him, "Whenever you go on an errand, as soon as it is done, return immediately. It is seen that some people dig for earthworms on the shallow surface, but then they dig deeper and find a snake." Right? This is kind of expanding on that idea that the idle mind is is the devil's playground. Right? When you give yourself extra time that's not defined or used for anything, then the mind is going to wander, and when it wanders, it goes to its attachments. That's what it does, and it starts. And as soon as it thinks of an attachment, it activates it. And if you're not watching and you're not aware that you just activated an attachment, it's going to manifest. You're going to go down that wrong path. And so this watching the mind is always very, very, very important. It's like what Swami Prabhupada told me one time. I went, this very early on in my monasticism also, I was at Bed Bath and Beyond with Greg, the other monk there, and he had some stuff he had to get, and I just went down there with him basically to get out of the monastery, honestly. I wanted to get out and get some stimulus. And so I went to the place with them, and when we went in, they were selling these boxes of tea glasses for like $1 for a glass. The big glasses, real nice. And we didn't have any tea glasses in the monastery. We only had little juice glasses, and I thought, oh, we should get some tea glasses. That's a good idea. And so I bought a big, like a set of, I don't know, 12 of them or something, a box of them, and It was only 12 bucks. No worries, right? So I took that home, and when I got back to the monastery, I set them on the counter in the kitchen, and I thought, well, later with the dishes, I'll wash them all up and put them away. Well, Swami Prabhupada came in from the office next door, and he came into the kitchen as he always did, and he saw the box there, and I was sitting in the kitchen there, and he said, "Oh, see, what is this?" And I said, "Oh, Maharaj, those are great. They were on sale. I picked them up at Bed and Bath. I got 12 glasses for $12." He's like, "Oh, very nice." And then he said, "Did you go into the store to buy 12 glasses?" I said, "What do you mean, Maharaj?" He says, "Well, did you have that on your list when you went into the store?" I said, "No, Maharaj." I said, "I didn't know they were going to be on sale." He says, "See, monks do not buy things because they're on sale. A monk does not walk out of the store with something he did not intend to buy when he walked into the store." And I was like, "Ooh, okay, got you." And I loved that teaching. I thought that's something I should have known. You know, and you will save yourself a lot of trouble when you go into a store. Don't just start letting your mind wander and touch everything and create desires in yourself and imagine desires, imagine outcomes for things. That's horrible for a spiritual seeker. You're exciting, you're lathering up all of these attachments and creating new ones and new possibilities. It's literally the antithesis of your spiritual practice. So it's like if you go into a store, go in, get what you intended to get, and leave. And if you don't need to get anything, don't go into the store. Going shopping is not an entertainment for spiritual seekers. It's a detriment to your practice. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but it's because you're not going to find your bliss. You're not going to be able to get through your attachments to experience the bliss of being. That's a very subtle bliss that's within us. That's a constant note being held by the body mind for you. I mean, it's it's because of the divine principle that you are. And when we do things that get us tied up or get us tied down and excite our mind, excite our senses, the scriptures say that any person who purposely excites their senses will never find internal peace. You know, so if you do things purposely to excite your senses, you will not find your inner peace. So just know that. And if you find that you're a person who doesn't have any inner peace, then sit and start watching. At what point in your life are you exciting your senses? What things are you lathering up that don't need to be lathered up? And how are you doing it? And become aware of it and stop. Stop so that your interior peace can become known to you, so that you can find that bliss that is yours by birth. It is human nature to create big problems out of petty matters. Oh boy. The mother always taught her disciples to have patience and forbearance and to endure everything calmly. She quoted the master, Sha, Sha, Sa. Forbear, forbear, forbear. He who forbears survives, and he who does not perishes. That is a very intense statement right there. Mostly it's like he who forbears is a nice person, and he who doesn't isn't. But this says if you forbear, that you will survive. If you don't forbear, you perish. Right? I can tell you, I've seen this teaching. I haven't read it directly like this, but I look back at my life in the monastery. There were those times where you just felt like I went through periods where I can't do this another day. I'm done. I don't like not having money. I don't like not having any authority. I don't like not being able to do what I want to do when I do it. Right? And if I had followed that lack of patience, that lack of forbearance, and just holding to the plow and keeping going, then you start nurturing these negative feelings inside. You start nurturing these discontents inside, and pretty soon they become the first thing you think about. They start sitting up there in front because you're referencing them all the time. And if you're constantly thinking about that discontent and the things that you don't like and the things that are getting under your skin, you'll perish. You'll leave. You'll run away, right? And you'll take refuge in distraction. That's really what happens. You take refuge in distraction. And when that begins to happen, your growth stops until you work through that. When you start taking refuge in distraction, then you're going to stunt your growth until you're able to stay sober in that moment, to not fall into your distractions, whatever they might be. This is something I was talking to Michael about with the garden today. That's one of the things that I know Mother's brought me here for at this monastery, because I've got a lot of gardening to do. And I look at out that window at, 50 acres of gardening, and just immediately feel myself shut down inside, just immediately think, I've got to go do something else real quick. I got to go check my email. I got to go make sure that my video is up for the day. It's like anything to avoid dealing with the elephant in the room. You just start digging into your distractions, whatever they buy. A quick video game, a quick check of the news, a quick check of the weather, a quick check of your email, a quick check of your messages. All of those things that we go and do, all things that, they're important, they have to be done. But you're not doing it because they're important and they have to be done. You're doing it because you don't want to do the big thing. You don't want to do the thing that's in front of you. And so these are the ways, Mother is telling us. She says, those who forbear survive, those who do not perish. She said, one suffers as a result of one's own karma. Right? This is great. If you're suffering, you're responsible for it. Now, what does that mean? That means you're empowered to change it. That's what that means. That means if you don't like your life, don't despair, change it. If yesterday didn't work, try something new today. This is the thing that drives me nuts in my own life, in my own stupidity, because I'm like, well, I didn't realize God yesterday. So if I live the exact same way today, what makes me think I'm going to realize him today? Right? And so we should really actively, our whole life is practice. And so we should sit down and think, okay, look, I didn't realize God today. What could I do different tomorrow? What should I change for tomorrow? So that I can realize God tomorrow that I didn't do today. And so tomorrow you get up and you do your day differently. Whether that's just doing something small or something big is up to you. But to have that consciousness, that awareness, the master every evening, remember, he would go and he was so overcome with the fact that another day had passed, that the sun had set again, and he had not yet seen God. He had not yet fulfilled the purpose of life. And he would go and pray to Mother while rolling in the dirt on the ground and banging his head on the ground, saying, Mother, when will I see you? When will I see you? I can't stand this life without you. I can't do this, every night. And he would count his successes and failures for the day, right? And so we should be the same every day. I didn't realize God today. That's one of the ways I challenge myself quite a bit because I always think, I'm a monk. And when I was studying that ideal, when I was doing the sannyas ceremonies and we were reading and chanting all of those beautiful shlokas about sannyas, oh my goodness gracious, was that hard to do? Because, oh boy, those ideals are lofty and beautiful beyond words. And when I would compare myself to them, I had nothing good to say for myself inside. I was just like, the day of the vows, I went and laid on the floor of Brahmananda's temple and just was lamenting, just saying, I don't know if I should do this. It's blasphemy, for someone like me to take these vows, to even approach these ideals like that, and I was really, really struggling with whether I should do it or not, because I was like, oh my God, is amazing. This is beyond my capability. And, I told mother, I says, you've got about 4 hours to stop this. If it's not proper for me to do this, if it's not proper for me to take these vows, you've got 4 hours to stop it. And in those next 4 hours, two men dropped out, out of the sannyas. They didn't take the vows. And I was like, oh boy. And I thought it was, I was thinking, okay, here it comes. But I didn't. I took the vows. And the next morning when I went and got my name from the guru, it had Brahmananda's name in it, Chid Brahmananda. So I just felt like Brahmananda had given me his, said, I don't know if it was stamp of approval, but he was like, go ahead and do it. I don't know exactly what he was thinking, but I felt I got that permission, from that. And so when we suffer, when our life is challenging, it's our own karma that makes it that way. And so when you're suffering, see that suffering and look at yourself. Say, why am I suffering? I've created this life. This moment that I'm sitting in right now is the sum total of all of my desires. This moment is a sum total of all my desires. If I'm not happy in this moment, then maybe I should change my desires. Maybe I should start looking for better desires. Not keep doing the same things and lamenting them. Change. Be free. Right? Forget your history. Forget your future. Take the moment and be free. Make your choices according to your heart and go forward in these things. One suffers as a result of one's own karma. So instead of blaming others, one should pray to God, depend on his grace, and bear those sufferings calmly under all circumstances. Right? Know that they are there out of love. You're suffering because of love, right? Every single spanking I ever got from my dad, I got that same lecture every time. I would get in trouble and he would say, come up to my room in half an hour. And I knew in half an hour I was going to get a spanking, right? And I'd go up to the room and he'd be sitting there and I'd have to sit down in front of him. And he'd say to me, it was always the exact same pattern. He'd say, do you know why you're going to be spanked? And I would have to say yes or no. If I said no, he would explain it to me. If I said yes, I had to explain it to him. And then he would always say that horrible statement that I never believed. This is going to hurt me much more than it hurts you. And then I would get my spanking, right, and go downstairs. And it was like, I asked him one time when I was in college, when I was a freshman in college, I asked him, I said, why didn't you just spank me? Why did you make me wait a half an hour? I said, that was always torture. And he said, because I wanted to make sure that I never struck you out of anger. He said, I always wanted to make sure that I wasn't angry when I hit you, so that the punishment would be proper, And I really respected that. I was like, yeah, that's pretty great. So I still got my spanking, but I knew why I got it. And it wasn't given to me in anger. And so I really understood it. And I feel like I grew from that. I don't feel like that was a negative thing for me to be, I know nowadays there's a lot of movement against that corporal punishment. And then, but I think it's because my father did it in that way, so that there was never through anger. He was never out of control when he hit me, you know. It was always very clear why he was doing it, and I always understood why he was doing it, and I knew it was because of love. He wanted me to get better, to be better, to do better. And so if you look at your life that way, when you're suffering, when you're going through things in life, it's for the same reason. The divine has punished you, made you suffer, not out of anger, not out of any other thing, out of love. So read it as love, accept it as love, and go forward. How? Right here he tells you, pray to God. Go to mother, say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I need to do better. I want to do better. Please help me. And then what? The second one here, he gives us this wonderful the wonderful three-step process. 1, pray to God. 2, depend on his grace. You are an awful person. You did make a mistake. You did break the rules. So what? The grace of God is bigger. The grace of God is deeper. So admit your mistake. Pray to God for strength. Set your sails to go in a better direction. And accept that grace with a chuckle, with a smile. And go, right? Go. Bear those sufferings calmly under all circumstances. Accept them and go forward with life. This is the way it is. Don't ever be beaten. Just keep getting up and going over and over and over again. Once in Jairambati, Holy Mother was rearranging something in her room by pushing a heavy table when the top of it came off and fell on her foot. She was badly injured and her foot was bleeding from a deep cut. It was painful and she sat down holding her foot with tears trickling from her eyes. Oh my gosh. Everyone present rushed to help her. The doctor came from the dispensary, applied medicine, and bandaged the wound. Holy Mother blamed herself. I thought that I could clean the room nicely by moving the table, but while lifting its heavy top, it fell on my foot. I will have to bear the result of my karma. I could easily have asked someone to move it. Just now a boy came from Kolpara with groceries. He ate refreshments, talked to me, and then left. He could easily have moved that table for me, but I wanted to do it myself. And as a result, I was injured. Mother just... Again, I'm reminded of my own greatness here. You know, when I worked in San Francisco, I was in the monastery there for 15 years or close to it. And we would put that annual Memorial Day retreat on every year where we would have to build this giant circus tent. It was like 120 feet long and 80 feet wide or something like that. And we would have to do it. And there was a time there where I was the only one in the monastery. Now, there were other people there helping me put that thing up. But you know, I got 5 hernias in those years because I would insist on doing things by myself, only because I had this egoistic need to be a hero. You know, it's like I just had this own, I blame it on being German, you know, just this stubbornness about doing it myself. You know, I don't need anybody. I can do this. And I would challenge myself, and I injured myself again and again. And again, I'd also split my meniscus on my knee doing the same thing, pushing a huge wheelbarrow full of tent roofs across the lawn, and it got stuck in a hole, and I walked into it and then lowered the wheelbarrow, and it made my knee hyper extend in the wrong direction. That's free. I'm just giving that to you just as a little treat for the class today, just a little something to remember with. All right. Just now, a boy came from Kolpar with groceries. He ate refreshments, talked to me, and then left. He could easily have moved that table for me, but I wanted to do it myself, and as a result, I was injured. I will have to go through this suffering in accordance with my destiny. Nalini gently reprimanded the mother for her action. The mother kept quiet. Gradually, her pain subsided. She then said to Saradeshananda, "My son, don't write about this incident to Sharat in Calcutta. No, instead put it in this book so the whole world can read about it later." "My son, don't write about this accident to Sharat in Calcutta. He will be anxious and immediately send someone here and there will be a commotion. That person will go through trouble to come here unnecessarily. This wound is not very serious. It will heal easily. Holy Mother had an independent nature and she never blamed others for her sufferings." Okay, there's a direct teaching, right? Never blame others for your suffering, right? And that's why we accept responsibility. If you look at Vivekananda's writings toward the end of his life, he accepted everything. You know, he accepted responsibility for it all. And the beauty of that is why. If you blame yourself, if you take responsibility, then you take the power to change. If you blame someone else, how are you going to change? You've put the power in their arena. and now you have to be a victim to it, right? So to take responsibility for yourself and go forward is to empower yourself, to give yourself the power to change and the responsibility to change so that your life gets better. If we're ones that are going around pointing at everybody else as being the source of our problems, then they're the source of the problems. There's nothing you can do, right? But if we take responsibility ourselves, even if someone else, they may have had a hand in it, no doubt about it. But there are things that you can do to have minimized that, or to have not fallen to that, or to have not been in their company, or, anything like that. And so better to take responsibility and go forward. When Swami Vivekananda When Swami Vivekananda first introduced philanthropic activities in the Ramakrishna mission, some monks thought that these activities did not conform to the ideal of Ramakrishna. But Holy Mother reminded them, all work belongs to the Master. My children, work for the Master. Otherwise, who will feed you? If you go on begging for food from door to door in the sun, you will get dizzy. If you do not eat well, you will be sick. Don't listen to those who doubt the activities of the Ramakrishna mission. Work well, eat well, and meditate on God. That's what we should put over our front door. Work well, eat well, and meditate on God. That'd be awesome. The mother always encouraged her devotees and disciples to practice japa and meditation, but she kept a vigilant eye on them and cautioned them not to overdo spiritual practice, right? Because egoism comes into life in many, 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 many different ways. And your spiritual practice is not to be an exception, right? So you have to watch yourself, right? It's so dastardly, that ego, but we can become proud of how much practice we do, how much japam we do, how long we sit in the shrine, all of these things. And we start doing more because we get a pleasure, we get a kudo out of it, that, oh, I've added 10 minutes to my meditations now, you know, things like that. And it's amazing, and we think that we're not susceptible to that stuff. But I found myself one of my most, one of the times I saw this most clearly in myself. Again, it was in DC. And I had been, it was in the afternoon. I had some free time. So I decided to go and sit in the shrine in the temple and just do a few minutes of meditation. So I went in there and I was sitting there and I was doing some meditation. And I heard the back door open in the shrine, and I heard somebody walk through the auditorium and then walk out the side door. And while I was sitting there, I just became aware at how happy I was that somebody had walked through the auditorium and caught me doing meditation when I didn't have to be meditating. You know, I could see in my mind, it was so proud. It was so happy to be caught doing the right thing. It's like, ooh, I just got caught doing a spiritual thing. And I saw that and I was like, oh my God, really? Really, even after all these years, is it really still this way, oh mind? Still caring what everybody's thinking, still taking joy in what others are thinking or seeing in you. Yes, no. So these things, she encouraged people to practice their japa and meditation, but kept a vigilant eye on them and cautioned them not to overdo spiritual practices, because that's the temptation. The ego wants to, I want it now, I can do this, right? She forbade them to practice too much austerity, and at the same time, she did not like too much luxury regarding food and clothing. Those who had an opportunity to live in the company of the mother realized that she taught them strength of character for building their lives, renunciation, forbearance, self-control, spiritual sadhana, firm faith in God under all circumstances, steadiness, devotion, and dependence on God. She did not care for emotional outbursts among her disciples. Rather, she wanted them to be balanced, to be calm, steady, and resolute. Swami Vasudevananda recorded the following teachings of Holy Mother. We'll read this one paragraph and end here for the day. In 1918, a devotee asked the mother, "Why do I have bad thoughts in my mind?" Holy Mother replied, "It is a natural tendency of the mind to go downwards. People build a dam to save water by tremendous effort, but sometimes the dam breaks and the water goes away. Still, people try to keep the dam intact. Let me tell you, holy company and spiritual talk help the mind to move upward. Moreover, even the mind of an ungodly person changes by the grace of a holy man. A greedy man went to a holy man in Brindaban to learn about how to make gold and received a philosopher's stone from him. Later, that man developed dispassion for wealth and received divine knowledge from the holy man. Thereafter, he threw away that stone. In the disguise of a monk, a hunter went to catch birds and observed their simple and fearless nature. This generated renunciation in him, and he gave up that cruel profession. So I tell you, have the company of the holy whenever you have the opportunity. If holy company is not available, then read holy books. The mind becomes pure by discussing the lives of great souls. Look, the movement of water is always downward, but the scorching sun evaporates the ocean water as vapor, which rises up and is blown away by the wind to the top of the mountains. There it becomes snow. Then it melts as water and flows through springs and rivers and helps humankind. All right. So this is that thing. It's like the mind, and this is kind of a spooky thing because you can see this, you know. Once you start watching mind, especially if you in the beginning when you start watching your mind, oh, I tell you, it's a disappointing time. When as you start building an awareness of where your mind goes when you're not looking, and it's just it's an unhappy thing, right? Which is exactly why you want to become aware of it, because that unhappy thing then changes once you become aware of it. You know, it'll stop doing that. And, I still catch my mind just usually at night when I go to bed. That's when it starts as I'm falling asleep and it's just kind of wandering. Oof, it's just a messy thing. You have to watch that thing. Watch that mind constantly. Always put the song of God in there somehow. So let me turn off the recorder here.